Once upon a time, small groups of people gathered in clans. From clans, they turned into tribes. From tribes into cities, kingdoms, nations, and eventually. It was only after thousands of years of evolution that human communities coalesced into institutions of a global scale. By creating the United Nations, the post-war leaders believed they could avoid the dangers of a cataclysm that could bring humanity to its extinction. As new international agencies were being born to tackle transnational problems that affected countries beyond their borders, more and more people started considering that maybe humanity's organic process of development included a pattern of achieving successive levels of unity and integration. The social, economic, scientific, and technological advances occurring in the past 100 years opened the doors for a great step forward in the organic evolution of mankind on this planet and indicate the means by which the practical problems of humanity could be solved. From the standpoint of many contemporary scholars and thinkers, like the Swedish physician Dr. Hans Rosling, humanity outlived two major world conflicts and grew, due to science and technology, to be healthier and wealthier than ever before. These resources provided the necessary tools for the administration of the complex life of an interconnected world community. Paradoxically, barriers persist. Doubts, misconceptions, prejudices, suspicions, and narrow self-interest beset nations and peoples in their relations to one another. Another great paradox is that today's greatest enemies in the world were once part of a single nation. Just to name a few, let's look at what's happening between Russia and Ukraine, North and South Korea, India and Pakistan, China and Taiwan. Literally, nations with family ties connecting its citizens now see each other as sworn-out enemies capable of waging war against their own people. At the same time, nations once torn apart by mutual carnage are now united in relative peace and prosperity, as it is the reality in the European Union. Flaws in the prevailing world system are too obvious to be ignored. The inability of sovereign states, organized in the United Nations, to eliminate the threat of another major war, and the outset of economic and social crises on a global scale is clear for all to see. Indeed, so much aggression and conflict have come to characterize our social, economic, and religious systems that many have succumbed to the view that such behavior is intrinsic to human nature and therefore impossible to be eradicated. With the entrenchment of this view, a paralyzing contradiction has developed in human affairs. On the one hand, people of all nations proclaim not only their readiness, but their longing for peace and harmony. On the other, uncritical assent is given to the proposition that human beings are incorrigibly selfish and aggressive, and thus incapable of erecting a global social system at once progressive and peaceful, dynamic and harmonious, a system giving free play to individual creativity and initiative, but based on mutual cooperation and reciprocity. As the need for peace becomes more urgent, this fundamental contradiction becomes more evident. For centuries, humans accepted slavery as a natural consequence of a supposed superiority of one race or religion above others. Now it seems clear and evident that those assumptions were a mistake, and slavery is seen as a horrendous crime against humanity. In the same way, war is still accepted as a last resort when conflicts arise between nations. Far from expressing man's true self, this behavior represents only the basest expression of the human spirit and an outmoded form of mutual relations. To better understand the current state of affairs, we need to carefully examine where the ideas that support war and conflict as part of our lives come from. Influential thinkers whose ideas helped shape the modern world not only had historically limited perceptions of reality, but their views were also broadly oversimplified and misunderstood. According to some religious beliefs, babies are born in sin. The famous English economist John Locke believed babies were born tabula rasa, blank slate, with little predisposition to attachment to property. Adam Smith said babies were born with a drive to be autonomous and pursue their self-interest in the market. Jeremy Bentham says babies are born with a desire to avoid pain and look for pleasure, driven by utilitarian desires. Charles Darwin's ideas led to a belief that our main goal is to reproduce our species, while later on, Sigmund Freud's theories lead to assumptions that we are born with an insatiable sexual appetite and all we do in our lives is try to fulfill and accommodate libido. Experience has shown that the constant repetition of these ideas and beliefs lead to a wave of utilitarianism, self-interest, and materialism. All these views were questioned, nuanced, or even demolished by the great thinkers and discoveries that followed them, but they are still held true by those who did not move forward. Names like Elinor Ostrom, Einstein, Adorno, Fromm, Carl Rogers, Edward Lawrence, Fritjof Capra, Robert Wright, Steven Pinker, Ken Wilber, and Jürgen Habermas, among so many others, have proved reality to be much more complex and benign. Humans have an enormous potential for good or bad, as history and daily experience proves, and we need desperately to expand the good potential to new heights and to the size of the planet. Nevertheless, as a result of the inertia of this outdated understanding of human nature, three main myths, modern-day dogmas, have become part of our culture. The first myth defines humans as being inherently selfish, aggressive, and competitive. This is a widespread and common belief, despite having been proved wrong by philosophy and by all contemporary sciences like psychology, sociology, and anthropology. The second myth, excellence, creativity, and productivity, are best motivated by self-interested competition. The third myth, competition is the driving force of progress in itself. But what if there was another way of looking at our motivations as human beings, a perspective that is both more fruitful and truthful to our nature? As an example, let's consider a recent event, the story behind the development of the COVID vaccines. At a time when the entire planet came to a standstill due to a previously unknown virus, a few dozen universities and labs around the world decided to start working together looking for an antidote in one of the biggest scientific collaboration events the world has ever seen. As a result, a process that would usually take 8 to 10 years of work came to fruition in only 18 months. This modern-day miracle was not the byproduct of competition, but of cooperation and reciprocity. Another great question remains. Is the greater level of prosperity, comfort, and health in the world today, as well as the widespread injustice, misery, and suffering, the product of science alone? Or are there other factors fueling this state of affairs? Could modern-day values and spirituality be the source of good towards justice, peace, and harmony? If some long-standing but outdated myths no longer reflect our reality, what are the new beliefs that embody the zeitgeist of this new millennium? According to Joseph Campbell, a new collective myth is gradually surfacing around the globe. A new narrative is becoming more acceptable to the unbiased observer. A story that considers all nations, races, and religions as part of one common, synchronized process of the evolution of mankind. The origin of this new myth can be traced to the 19th century, to the land of Persia. A nobleman called Bahá'u'lláh is known to have declared in the late 1800s that the earth is but one country and mankind its citizens. Baha'u'llah affirmed time and again that all religions derive their inspiration from one single source, and that all human beings are the leaves of one branch, the fruits of one tree, and the drops of one single ocean. In his words, all human beings have been created noble with the aim of acquiring virtues in order to build an ever-advancing civilization. It lies with us to make the choices that will lead to a world that is, at the same time, peaceful and united, diverse and harmonious, prosperous and fair, in the fullest material and spiritual civilization ever created on earth. The ultimate purpose of justice is the appearance of unity, peace and prosperity amongst all peoples of the earth.